Would you ever pick Nikki Haley? Would you ever, as a VP, would you ever do that?
Crazier things have happened.
Ooh,
I don't know. I would
no.
never say never with Donald J. Trump. Never say never.
You said that about Chris Christie? Almost. All right, Laura, really good having you again. Appreciate your time. Laura Trump, everybody.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about the Trump vice president conversation, because as it gets closer and closer and closer to voting in the primaries, it seems as if that Trump is going to run away with the nomination. Okay, he might take all 50 states in a landslide. So there's already conversations about who is going to be his pick for vice president. And as you guys saw at the beginning of this video, Lord Trump was asked by Eric Bolling whether or not she could rule out Nikki Haley being the pick for Trump. And she said, well, you know, never say never, right? You can never say never, which has basically made a whole lot of people upset, right? Because the conservative base, the MAGA base, they do not want Nikki Haley to be the vice president for obvious reasons. And because of this, you have some people that's a part of the Trump campaign, like Don Jr., coming out and basically pushing back against this idea of Trump picking Nikki Haley to be his VP. Take a look.
The reason why I bring this up, Don, is because your sister-in-law was on the show last night, talked about Nikki Haley, and I said something like, well, you know, would he ever, would Trump ever consider Nikki Haley as a vice president on the ticket? And she said, not if she doesn't drop out very soon. And I said, well, if she did, she said, never say never. Now, she wouldn't say the same thing about Chris Christie. So let's play this soundbite. Listen to this, and let me ask you the same question.
It's not about fitness. I think he's fit to be president. It's should he be president. I don't think he should be president. You know, I thought he was the right president at the right time. I agreed with a lot of his policies. The problem is, you see our country is in disarray. Our world is on fire. And you can't defeat Democrat chaos with Republican chaos. And Donald Trump brings us chaos. So it's not about being fit. It's just I don't think he's the right person to be president.
So what do you say, Don? Does effectively eliminate her from the potential VPs?
Listen, I wouldn't have her out. I would go to great lengths to make sure that that doesn't happen. Nikki Haley wants never-ending wars. She's a puppet of the establishment in Washington, D.C. She's the new favored candidate of the billionaire class because they want control. No different than academia and Harvard and using, you know, their billions to exercise influence. They want someone they control. Ron DeSantis has proven that he doesn't have what it takes to be on that stage. He's embarrassed himself that way. She's now the preferred candidate. No, I would not want Nikki Haley to be there. All we get from her is never-ending wars. And by the way, all you'd get is her, a team trying to destroy Donald Trump from within forever. The second she ever got that, you know, anointment, it would be a disaster of epic proportions. So I would hope that that never is on the table, and I don't think it is.
Yeah, so you see, Nate, heard that. Okay, now we're going to come back to this conversation about Nikki Haley potentially being the VP pick. But somebody else that a lot of people were speculating could be the VP pick is Tucker Carlson, who just started his new network, the Tucker Carlson Network, which I'm assuming is there to compete against Fox News and, you know, other alternative media outlets and things like that. He has been a name that's been floated around in regards to somebody that Trump should pick as VP, but it seems like Tucker is kind of ruling himself out as a potential VP pick.
I know you get asked this all the time, but I mean, if asked, would you serve?
Well, it's just so unimaginable. I mean, I haven't led a life that prepares a person for politics. As I said, I don't think I have any like horrible skeletons or anything. It's not that. It's just that that's not how my brain works. I've never done anything like that. I can't imagine spending time with politicians. I'm a total sucker for Trump. I think he's, you know, personally, I get along with Trump really well. The closer I am physically to Trump, like if I'm with him in the room, I always love Trump. And I think it's impossible not to, and you know the experience. He's just charming, okay? And he's funny as hell, and he's brave in his way, I think. So I really appreciate that, and I agree with fundamentally with his views. You know, maybe fewer wars, maybe have a border. Like, those are not crazy things, and I support them. And I'm appalled and terrified by the use of the DOJ to rig an election, which is what's happening now. So all those factors make me kind of psyched to vote for Trump.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that, okay? Tucker is kind of ruling himself out, right, in regards to being a candidate to be a VP pick, which is understandable. He probably is more concerned about, running his own network and, still maintaining his presence in the media rather than being vice president, even though I would like to see Tucker Carlson as vice president. However, I don't think that is going to happen. Now, Tucker was asked at the Turning Point USA conference about who he thinks would be a good pick for vice president. He was asked about Nikki Haley, potentially being the pick, and boy, oh boy, oh boy, did Tucker Carlson go off.
Would you vote for Trump if he chose Nikki as VP? And
would you guys vote for Trump? Well, that's the question that I asked you specifically.
Well, I would not only not vote for that ticket, I would advocate against it as strongly as I could.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's just poison. I mean, here's someone who's actively opposed to the interests of the country I grew up in, who endorsed the BLM riots, and who is not only is not left, but is neoliberal in the darkest, most, speaking of nihilistic way, and has no real popular support, is a creature of the oligarchs. So yeah, that would be reason to oppose the ticket.
Even Trump, Haley is a no-go.
Nikki Haley,
he would get assassinated immediately if that were the case.
Yeah, and by the way, I just can't imagine a world where that could happen. That would be so crazy. I mean, anything could happen, of course, but picking Nikki Haley, who's utterly treacherous and utterly dismissive of like the interests of Americans. Yeah.
It's a no-go for me, but it's a yes for BlackRock.
Yeah, so Tucker basically declared that he would not vote for Trump and he would actively campaign against the ticket if he picks Nikki Haley as VP, which is a big deal considering how this is Tucker Carlson, who's probably the most influential person in conservative media, right? This was a huge statement. Also, he didn't just go off on this idea of Trump picking Nikki Haley. He also went off on Ron DeSantis supporters online as well, too. Take a look.
Can I just ask a question, since you all are so on the internet and like I'm not that much? You really get the sense that Ron DeSantis, who I liked as governor, the people who represent him online are the nastiest, the stupidest, and the most zero-sum people I've ever seen in my life. And I don't think that reflects him, but it's like, this is kind of small ball. And by the way, these purported conservatives, Ron DeSantis changed his view, and I like him, I think he's been a good governor. I just want to be clear about that. I know him personally, I like him. But his donor, Ken Griffin, told him to change his view on Ukraine from it's a regional conflict we shouldn't get involved in to it's a super important thing, we should send more money. One donor got him to change his view, and all these so-called conservatives are supporting that like it's the most important thing ever. Like, who are these people and what is their problem? Like, what is going on with them?
It does reflect on Ron, because Ron should have fired the people running his campaign a long time ago. Look, I respect that he wanted to launch his campaign on X, on Twitter Spaces at the time, and it failed miserably. This is a mistake. And now you've got, look, I know a lot of people groan, but a lot of people laugh. The high heels, boots scandal. I mean, who's giving this guy advice, and why does he keep taking it? Because I will say it politically and policy-wise, we love Ron DeSantis. Yeah. He's done an amazing job.
I agree.
But his campaign is a train wreck.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from that conversation, it sounds like Ron DeSantis could be a questionable VP pick as well, too. Not that I think that Ron DeSantis would actually want to be VP at this point. Okay, I do think that Nikki Haley would want to be VP, but it sounds to me like even DeSantis would probably be questionable, not because of his policies, but just because he's not a good, campaign guy, right? He's not a good guy to throw out there on the ticket and to get people to vote for him. I mean, just look at the polls. He's the least electable GOP candidate in the general election against Joe Biden, right? Which is something that, again, it really blows my mind, because we were sold this idea that, hey, don't vote for Trump because DeSantis is more electable, when that just turned out to be completely false, right? DeSantis might be the least electable GOP candidate out of everybody in the field, okay? I'm just saying, right? But with that being said, Tucker did say who he wants to see or who he would like to see as VP for Trump, and this is his response. Take a look.
I mean, I kind of like Vivek. I think he's one of those people who everyone beats up on Vivek for being, he's a phony and all this stuff. I don't know. I've covered a lot of campaigns going back to 1992, and I've noticed this thing in many candidates, and I notice it in him. The process of running for president and speaking 3 times a day and having people throw hostile questions in your face causes you to change. They all change during these campaigns, like for real, inside. And I feel like Vivek's positions have gotten much more sincere since the beginning of this. Like I watch him with Nikki Haley, and I'm like, this is a guy who's very offended by her views, like for real. He's not attacking her because she's a woman. He's attacking her because he actually thinks her views are terrible for the country he lives in. And I love that.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Okay, now I'm going to talk about all this, right? I want to address all of these things. I actually want to address the Ron DeSantis thing first and his supporters online. Here's how I feel about this. It really does sadden me to see the beef / civil war between Trump supporters and Ron DeSantis supporters online, okay? I have no issues with people who support Ron DeSantis. I like Ron DeSantis, okay? I think that Ron DeSantis was a great governor. I just think that people get too emotional about something that, honestly, at the end of the day, when all of this stuff is done, right? Let's say Trump becomes a nominee. Ron DeSantis and Trump will probably be buddy-buddy again, right? They'll go back to how they were before all of this started. And that's just politics, right? Look at what happened between Trump and Ted Cruz, okay? Trump was destroying Ted Cruz in the primary, the GOP primary back in 2015, 2016. I mean, it got personal, right? But then after that, well, Ted Cruz was the biggest Trump supporter ever, right? So again, that's how politics works, right? And I want people to understand that while you're going back and forth online with people because of who they support in the primaries, I personally think that it's really not that serious, right? And I think that all this back and forth between Trump supporters and DeSantis supporters is unproductive, right? But with that being said, again, I don't think that Ron DeSantis would accept a VP spot from Trump, but I also don't think that Ron DeSantis would be a good pick. And one of the reasons why is because I really actually don't think that Ron DeSantis is electable at the general election level, right? At the national level, I don't think he's electable. And it's an unfortunate thing to say about a governor, a conservative governor that has been one of the best conservative governors that we've seen in a long time. But that is the reality of the situation. I really don't think that he's electable, and the polls show that, right? Now, again, could the polls be wrong? Sure, the polls could be wrong, right? But if you assume that the polls are wrong about Ron DeSantis' electability, then you got to assume that the polls are wrong about Trump's lead over Biden and Nikki Haley's lead over Joe Biden, which brings me to Nikki Haley, right? And her lead over Joe Biden, which is why a lot of people are speculating that Trump could pick Nikki Haley as VP, because, if you take away the chance that MAGA would abandon Trump if he picks Nikki Haley, then she would be the best pick. I mean, if you just look at the polls, she's been consistently dominating Biden in the general election for a long time now. Now, again, this could be a psyop, right? This could be fake. But again, if you assume that that's fake, you got to assume that all the polls are fake. So let's assume that is real. And I think that there's an explanation for why it's real. And I think that it has to do with the abortion conversation. I think that Nikki Haley has done a good job in regards to framing that issue in a way, and also being a woman as well too, that makes people more comfortable with voting for her, okay, as a choice for president, okay? And I think that that's the Achilles heel of the Republican Party, the abortion issue. And I really do think that that accounts for why Nikki Haley polls better than Trump against Joe Biden, okay? But with the possibility that the base would abandon Trump if he picks Nikki Haley, that essentially makes her a bad pick, right? Because people are saying, look, we don't want somebody like Nikki Haley, who is establishment, who is a warmonger, who is somebody that, in my opinion, I think would try to stage a coup against Trump, right? Because otherwise I would tell people that the VP pick is not that big of a deal, right? I mean, the VP is only as powerful as the president makes the VP. But again, there's a chance that, Trump could die in office. I mean, he is up there in age. Or that, Nikki Haley, again, with the establishment, could stage some type of coup, right, as vice president against Trump, right? She could work against the America First agenda, especially when it comes to foreign policy. So, even though I think Nikki Haley, okay, would be a decent pick if you're talking about trying to win a general election and assuming that MAGA doesn't abandon Trump for picking Nikki Haley. But now that basically the news has come out that MAGA would abandon Trump if he picked Nikki Haley, then she's probably not a good pick, okay? Even if she helps Trump out on the abortion issue. Now, Tucker brought up Vivek Ramaswamy as a pick that he would like for Trump. And I got to tell you guys, You know, in my personal opinion, that would be a dream come true, right? If Trump actually picked Vivek Ramaswamy to be his VP, I would quite literally knock on so many doors. I would come out here and I would support that ticket like never before. It would be the most exciting ticket in my lifetime, right? I would, again, you don't understand how happy I would be, right? I would throw a party, right? I would throw a party if Trump picked Vivek to be his VP, okay? The amount of joy and happiness I would get from that would be overwhelming. It would be like something you've never seen, right? Every time I get on the camera, I would smile. Like, why are you smiling for today? Because Trump picked Vivek as his VP, right? Because I think that Vivek has lined himself up to be the guy that can take the America First movement to the next level and is the future of America First, right? In regards to being able to articulate the policies and understanding the direction that this country needs to move in, right? So with that being said, though, okay, in my ideal world, okay, Vivek would be the VP pick. However, we're not living in my ideal world. We're living in America, which is not the ideal world. It's not the ideal country at this point. And I think personally that Vivek would not be a great pick for Trump. Do I think that he would sink Trump's campaign? No. But when we're talking about trying to win a general election, Trump and Vivek are too close, right? They're too similar to each other. And I really do believe that it probably would be difficult, right, for both of them to work together, considering how Vivek doesn't seem like the type of guy that would take a number 2 spot, right? I mean, he is an alpha dog, right? He is an alpha, okay? And Trump's an alpha. And when you have 2 alphas, you know, on the same ticket, I think that can create some problems and some issues, right? So not only just that, but also, again, from a policy and a rhetoric perspective, they're very similar. So I think that Vivek has the ability to expand the base, but I'm not sure how he will perform at the general election level. And it's hard to really gouge it because there are not many polls that are out there that really can test Vivek's general electability, okay, when we're talking about a national election, because he doesn't have a household name, right? Like, a lot of people don't really know Vivek, even though he's been on mainstream liberal media, even though he's been around everywhere. I think that he's just not there yet in regards to popularity. So I honestly don't know. It's like it's a wild card, right? It's a wild card. But I do think there's no doubt that he will be offered a spot in the administration, whether that be the head of maybe one of these, you know, agencies, maybe like the FDA or something like that. Maybe he'll be, you know, a part of Trump's, you know, advisor circle in the White House. I'm not entirely sure. I think he definitely will have a spot in the administration. I just don't know if VP is going to be that spot, right? But I'm pretty sure he will be offered a spot, no doubt. You know, in 2024, Democrats, the issue that they're going to focus on the most is going to be abortion. With that being the issue, Trump is going to have to pick somebody that can get the messaging right, that can make people comfortable with the Republican ticket, okay, and this issue of abortion. And this is why I believe, personally, that the dark horse pick for Trump, okay, I'm not saying this is going to be the pick. I think that this pick right here might be able to make everybody happy and also maybe potentially expand Trump's base, maybe bring in some moderates. I think the dark horse pick is going to be Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, the former Democrat who I guess now is unaffiliated, but she's basically essentially become a conservative. I mean, she's in conservative spaces. She's in conservative circles. I know there are conservatives who have issues with Tulsi, but Tulsi doesn't seem like the type of person, one, to try to stage a coup against Trump. Two, she doesn't seem like the type of person to take the spotlight away from Trump. And three, I believe that for, you know, a good amount of her career, she has been pro-choice, but she's also been pro-life as well too. And most recently, she has moved in the direction of more pro-life. In fact, before she left Congress, she proposed to restrict abortion after 20 weeks, right? So she's kind of been in the middle on that issue. And I think as a woman, again, she will be able to talk about that issue much more effectively than a guy, right? A man. And I hate the fact that, again, this is what our politics is boiled down to, which is identity politics. However, that is kind of what is going to take in order to win a general election, in my opinion. I think that Trump is basically going to be forced to pick a woman because of this abortion issue being so important. He has to get this pick right. And in my opinion, again, if you look at the polls, how well Nikki Haley is doing in the general election polls, look at how she's moderated herself on this issue of abortion. Trump's going to have to pick somebody that is in that same kind of mold, right, from an identity perspective, but can get the abortion issue right in regards to how to talk about it in a way that's not going to piss a lot of people off and that is going to satisfy both sides, right? I think that Nikki Haley has kind of figured that out. I think Tulsi has a track record that indicates to me that she probably can, play that role, okay? But, there is some policies that I think that a lot of people kind of have issues with Tulsi over, but I don't think they're deal breakers. At least as far as I know now, I don't know, right? Her track record on guns are terrible, but she has shifted to the right on that issue, okay? She shifted to the right. And again, we'll see if, her past track record is really a deal breaker, despite the fact that, again, she has shifted to the right on a lot of issues, and she is kind of anti-establishment, especially when it comes to foreign policy. That's one of the main reasons why, conservatives are rejecting Nikki Haley as VP is because she's a war hawk, right? She's a neocon, okay? Tulsi, on the other hand, is not that, right? It's a little bit more complex with Tulsi, but she's definitely not that. And, in my opinion, I've been wondering why is Tulsi trying to ingratiate herself with the conservative movement so much, right? Well, maybe because she is gunning for that VP spot, okay? And maybe she could be the dark horse candidate for VP. And I think that would kind of check all the boxes that are needed to give Trump the best chance of winning. Now, again, is it the ideal pick? No, I think the ideal pick, again, is somebody like a Byron Donalds, a Vivek Ramaswamy. Ben Carson. I wouldn't be mad with Ben Carson, right? Ben Carson's name was being thrown around, right? I wouldn't be mad with any of those guys, right? But I do think that from an electability perspective, Trump has to get the pick right. We don't live in a current political environment where you kind of can just pick a person that, completely aligns with the conservative base and is, everybody in the conservative base is going to love. We're not at that point in politics. You got to pick somebody that's going to be able to expand the base, okay, and that's going to help you win the general election. I don't think that the VP spot is that important. It's as important as the president makes it, as long as the president continues to stay alive. Now, if the president dies, now clearly the VP is very important, right? So that balance there has to be obtained, and I think Tulsi would be the dark horse candidate to do that. Now, I know some people are probably thinking, what about, conservative, governors like, for example, a Sarah Huckabee Sanders or a Kristi Noem or even a Carrie Lake, who is not governor of Arizona, right? But she, almost won that election. I think that when it comes to Sarah Huckabee Sanders and somebody like a Kristi Noem, I think they're good picks. However, I just don't think they would expand the base, okay, or they would expand the, voter base as much as somebody like a Tulsi Gabbard would, right? Which is what you need to win a general election. Carrie Lake, I think, would be an excellent press secretary, right? I think Carrie Lake would quite literally be the best pick for press secretary. But yeah, my point is that there's multiple ways to think about it, right? You got to think about this VP pick from the perspective of who gives you the best chance of winning, right? There's the ideal pick, right, which is what I think everybody in the base wants, right, which is somebody that agrees with us the most. And then you have the most electable pick, which is somebody that is actually going to be able to win a general election. That's how it's always been when it comes to picking VPs, right, and matching them up on a ticket. And I just think that, I think it's unfortunate, but I really do believe that Trump is basically stuck between a rock and a hard place. He's going to have to pick a woman, and it's going to be because of this issue of abortion. It's too important, and there's too much at stake not to get that VP pick right and to win the general election. And they're going to have to get that abortion issue right if they want to win the general election. And I think a part of that is going to be picking a female VP, right? Because that's going to help them the most when it comes to this issue. Having somebody that can talk about it in a way that is going to, help with the single woman vote. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.